Alright guys, so I have a theory for you guys today, okay? So before I start this, we have to read a little bit about Wraith. Wraith is 32, and Homeworld is Typhon, okay? We need this right now, okay? Just to know. So the Apex games start a decade after the Frontier War ends, or after the events of Titanfall 2, okay? Which a decade after is 2733. Okay, so that means Wraith was born 2701, which is not adding up, to say the least. She was born after the events of the Frontier War, or of Jack Cooper, okay? This needs to be taken seriously, because EA goofed up, and I have found out about it, okay? So, if she's 32, she was born 2701. And if we go over to the Titanfall wiki, okay, ultimately, the battle would conclude with the IMC attempting to fire the full-scale fold weapon, which is the main goal that you're trying to stop in Titanfall, through intervention of Jack Cooper, and I'm just say BT because that's what we call him, would cause the weapon to backfire, shattering the planet down to the core. Yet, somehow, Wraith was born on an exploded planet. Interesting. I'm not sure how that's possible. Okay. What is with that? Another thing, too, that I wanted to help with this is a lot of people have been asking, you kill Ash on Typhon, right? How are her parts on the Apex Outlands? And I believe this. It exploded, right? Typhon goes and explodes. So, space has no gravity, and it has nothing to slow anything down. So if you shoot a gun in space, the bullet will just keep going on forever, theoretically. Okay? So with that in mind, we take Ash, and let's say that she, for whatever reason, she's on the opposite end of the planet where the fold weapon explodes, or something like that. Okay? Herpes is just get full on the complete other direction. You know, and they keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going, and they keep going. Okay. And they land on the outer world, on the outer rim, and which is now what we call King's Canyon, okay? And I believe Cuban Blisk, the apex predator, went down and tried to track down Ash. And we go into factions, there's the Mercenary Syndicates, okay? And I think that Hammond Robotics and the Mercenary Syndicate, which is basically was just Cuban or Blisk, they teamed up, okay? And Vincent Dynamics has no leader because there's no Ash. And so Hammond Robotics goes and helps, or goes and basically is like, Vincent Dynamics, keep this with us. And I think that since Blisk tried to, hunt down, the Vincent Ash, okay, he found, like, nothing. It was nowhere to be found whatsoever. But you gotta remember, at this time, this explosion was so powerful, it destroyed a planet like Death Star. It completely shattered the planet. It shattered the planet down to its core. That's how huge this explosion was. Okay. And also, you see that stops time, which means it had a huge warp. It had a huge fold warp on the entire world. Okay, or probably the entire galaxy, to be honest. Or exactly a certain zone that it's possible Keen's Canyon was in that zone. And in that, this time, the pieces went into there, and through the fold weapon, you see time stopping, you see going back in time, you see other realities. So it says that it's another reality, right? So maybe they went through when the fold weapon exploded. They went through the portal. That's we went through for the Fire and Fright event. We went through for everything. We went through the portal, and it landed in separate pieces depending on weight, air shape, longitude, and latitude, all across Keen's Canyon. And since nobody touched it for years, nobody really knew. And then, as we all know, the things that happen in the real Keen's Canyon sometimes will come back to the Shadow Keen's Canyon, which we see by flyers, leviathans, and buildings. That's the biggest one, which means that the buildings that were happening in that dimension or that reality were shadowed upon the other reality of the Shadow World, okay? Which is what had all the buildings, which means that the pieces got shoved down to the ground, which is why we need a digger to dig them up. And so this all wraps up back to how Vincent, basically all of these are, except for excluding these, are part of the mercenary syndicates. Okay. You guys are getting it now? And on top of all this war, Wraith was born on an exploded planet. The only possible way that this could have happened, that Wraith was born on the planet, is, this is going to sound crazy, which it has been kind of confirmed, but in the Voidwalker event it says the IMC is still on your world. So it's possible that this Wraith that's born on Typhon is not the Wraith of our dimension. It means that she doesn't remember who she is, which could possibly be that Voidwalker Wraith is the Wraith that we hear on that tablet in the labs, and this Wraith believes it's her, and it's still her name and all that. And then this Wraith, okay, is from a different dimension, and in that explosion got folded, teleported, whatever you want to call it, into that dimension, into the dimension as we play in the Apex games, which is kind of confusing. But she was probably young, and then she kind of just grew up thinking, this was the dimension, And then at that point, we know that the IMC war was still kind of going on, which means that she grew up wanting to join the IMC to help fight in the war. She always dreamed of being a pilot, who, like a lot of people do. So she became a pilot, or she tried to become a pilot. I believe that they didn't like pilots, that her quote-unquote phase technology, she was trying to do what the robots were doing in Titanfall to, organic flesh, or organic, material. Which, I have proof of this, because if you go into Titanfall, and you go into phase, and you, click on phase, it's not a real human. You can see multiple places that's a robot. It's not a simulacrum either, because simulacrums actually got faces, they actually got stuff like that. Okay? Which means that they are robots produced by most likely Hammond Robotics, because to fight the IMC war, because they are with the IMC, which means that wraps it up that the IMC was also part of the Apex Predators, which is part of the Hammond Robotics, which is part of Lastimos Army, Proteus, Vince Dynamics, and Woyon. Okay. It's going to start coming. And the IMC decides, I'm gonna back out. And they're like, fine, we'll make our own syndicates, because the INC was kind of the main funder of this, okay? So they make their own syndicate, and they call it the Mercenary Syndicate. But they need money to try to find Ash to put a larger picture into motion that I, don't got any proof of anything of that. So, they need to find Ash for something larger than what we know right now to be put in motion. And so what they're doing is putting Legends, or they're making a deal with Loba, and that's how she got into the games, if she can convince the Legends to get this Broken Ghost artifact for her, then they will give her the source code for Revenant, which is his brain, which is how Simulacrums are made. And so, then, when that all happens, and all is said and done about that, once they have Ash, they are going to make some huge move. Something huge that we don't have any proof or any picture of. We don't got anything of that. But it will most likely include retrying to make the fold weapon, is my guess. They're going to retry to start the war, or try to go back in time and win the war. And the Legends will have to be the ones to stop them, or something like that. That is my guess, even though it's kind of far-fetched. But that's what I think they need Ash for. So then Ash could go through, test everything, because, as long as they have source code, which, again, Ash was already a Simulacrum, and she was already a Simulacrum. It means that they already had the source code, and she had her own thing combined with Hammond Robotics, because Hammond Robotics made Simulacrums, okay? And so, that means that she made Vincent Dynamics and had Hammond Robotics sponsor her, so then she could kind of do her own thing. And then they have the source code somewhere, because Hammond Robotics is so huge, they survived it, which means her source code was probably not blown up. That, or maybe Ash is a Simulacrum, but she's not a Simulacrum in a way. They might have taken a Simulacrum, right? Her Simulacrum, and made an exact copy of the Simulacrum, but she made a copy of the Simulacrum, so there was two Ashes at once, okay? And so the copy of the Simulacrum, was just data. It didn't need a source code. And so they had the one that needed the source code, take the source code, and go hide on some faraway planets, which we can know now as the Outlands. And then they'd use the Ash, who really did not need, wasn't useful, they didn't need, and they took her, and they put her in the field of battle. But that kind of leaves the question, why don't they just give her any body? And the answer is, in my opinion, it's possible that in those pieces, that Ash died before. And the person with the Ash Simulacrum took her source code, okay? And the Ash that we fought was the true, Ash Simulacrum, the last one that they could afford to make. So they lost the source code in the explosion. But for some reason, whatever reason, okay, I quite don't have the theory on this. I'm still working on it. But for whatever reason, she, her head, took in all the data from the brain. It was a direct transmission. It was a direct transmission between the two. So it was really like her having a brain, and it wasn't It wasn't like kind of just copy. It was like a direct correlation with her real brain. And every time she made a movement, made anything, okay, they recorded it, they saved it in data, and that data is throughout pieces in her head, okay? And so since they're throughout places through her, like all her artifacts, because they wanted to make sure, well, if she was, an eye or both her eyes, that we won't be screwed. If she uses, half her head, we won't be screwed. And that's kind of how it went. And then what it does then is it has an algorithm built into it, which basically takes all choices and does what the person would most likely do. But in this case, all choices were all the data they had from her doing her actions, all of what she was saying, and she was probably alive for 100 years. The Frontier War went on that long. She was probably alive for a while, and she was an apex predator. Since she was an apex predator, they would have known her fighting style, her everything. And so what they need is the head, so then they can rebuild the body if they don't have a body already in place. So then they can rebuild Ash, so then they can put a bigger plan into motion that they need. Think about it. Cuban Blisk he's really old. He had a white beard and stuff like that when we saw him in the opening climactic. Which means that he might not be able to do it anymore. He might be the only person who he trusts himself to send. And that's alive anyways. So then he thinks, who else? Who else do I trust even just a tiny bit more than just some... Sorry, my headset disconnected. Not sure what that's about. But he might be too old, so he might be thinking, who's the one person in the entire world who's alive that I trust more than some random IMC person to go set my plan in motion. It says in some dialogue that they haven't seen him in a year, and that they speculate that he's dead. So it could be possible that he's not dead, but by them thinking that he's dead, he can set a plan into motion that needs to be that he's dead, or else something bad will happen. And he thinks the only person who can do this is who's still alive and who's still be alive possibly is Ash. But we don't have the source code. But we had that thing in her head, And so they go on and they're like, we need to get Ash back. And since he is, here, let me look up. So he is, I actually don't know what he is, but he is the Apex Games Commissioner. Apex Games Commissioner. Okay. Which means that whatever he says basically goes. So he might want to, he'll say, hey, let's go get Ash, and he's like the best bounty hunter. He was the, best bounty hunter back in the Frontier War. Okay. So I believe that he needs Ash back. So then he can do whatever his plan is to set into motion, whether that be go back in time, create a new fold weapon, use the legends to any advantage they can, like they're already doing, by the way. So there's anything. There's got to be something that Blisk needs Ash for, and it's some bigger picture that we don't know yet. But hopefully in the 2 quests to come, and as more are released, we will get answers. And I will make an update to this video if I ever come across more data. But I want to thank you guys for sticking along this round. It's at the 20-minute mark of me just kind of ranting on and saying, yeah, for a while. But I want to thank y'all so much for watching. Comment down below if you guys think that this theory is correct, if you have your own theories, or if you have some modifications to my theories. Like and subscribe, and I will see all of y'all's in the next video.